You go. And we're back. Welcome to Owen and Perram Play Dungeons and Dragons, where we are going to indeed try to play the 1994 Dungeons and Dragons arcade game while we actually just spend this time chatting about the RPG industry and things that we like and are nerdy and are cool. If you are joining us in chat, thank you so much. We will try to answer chat questions throughout the episodes as we get horribly pummeled by the digital arcade pixel creations of Capcom and spend all the virtual quarters. Owen, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for asking. I am prepared to spend a stupid amount of virtual money to try and stay alive.
Indeed, and we're probably going to have we've got a lot to talk about today. There is going to be some, since we're playing video games, there's actually been some video game news that just hit us. There's going to be a new Pathfinder game. I'm sure we're going to chat about that. And of course, next week, me and Ryan are going to talk all kinds of crap about that. I'm about to head out to PAX. You've got that 52 and 52 thing still going.
Yep.
And gosh, and boy, howdy. So, getting started, we are going to be playing again the Tower of Doom. We played the Chronicles of Mystara, no, Shadows over Mystara last time. This time we're going to play the Tower of Doom and hopefully beat it. It's if you have infinite quarters, I find these games are actually pretty short. So you will see us flail, you will see us die, you'll see us try all the characters and name them B, and then we will, of course, eventually make the terrible choices and eventually see credits.
And for those of you that were watching last time, I do in fact have a vague idea what buttons to push this time. So we'll see if that increases or decreases the total entertainment value.
Well, let's hope increases in the order of things. All right, so
yeah, we'll see.
Let's pull up the game and see where we're at. All right, so there we go. We've got the game on screen. We're going to go ahead and start here. For those of you who don't know, this game came out in 1994. Capcom made it. This was definitely Japanese Capcom. You'll see a lot of anime influences. This is going to look very similar to Record of Lodoss War, which was the RPG du jour at the time, the most popular RPG over in Japan. We got a choice between Elf, Fighter, Cleric, and Dwarf. I'm going to go with Fighter because I don't trust myself.
I'm going with Dwarf because I love dwarves.
We have to name the fighter, but I found out in the last game, if you just hit A, it gave them a name.
It's true. But I'm going to do a name.
And did not do it this time. I'm just the fighter.
I mean, I've heard worse names.
My fighters all used to be named Bob, but of course I was 12, so.
There's nothing wrong with being 12. I always named characters early on after characters I liked in science fiction books, and since I was playing fantasy characters, it always made sense that it was okay to use science fiction names that wasn't actually, being unimaginative, which is 12-year-old logic.
Books? This is treasure?
Apparently books are treasure now.
So what were your sci-fi books you liked when you were growing up?
I was a huge fan of the Lensman series, which was E. Doc Smith. He also did Skylark and had some other less commonly known things, Galaxy Primes, for example. And so this is an important part of my development. In the Galaxy Primes, which was written in the 30s, one of the major characters is gay. It's a gay guy. And he is trying out for this long-term expedition, and he and his lover are both trying out, and only one of them gets in, and there's a conversation about it. And I mean, I was, 7 or 8 when I read this. This is literally my first exposure to the idea that two men might be romantically inclined. And so I went to my mother, and I told her, hey, I'm reading this, and I'm not sure I'm reading it right. And the reason I wasn't sure I was reading it right is that when I read Lord of the Rings at age 7, I got confused that Merry appeared to be a boy, because I'd never heard of a boy named Merry as opposed to, Meriadoc. And she told me, oh, no, it's his nickname. That's a boy halfling or hobbit, and that made sense to me. So I went to her and I asked, and to her credit, right, I'm 8, 9 years old, and she just said to me, "No, sweetheart, you understand correctly. These are two male characters. Some men feel the way about men romantically that other men feel about women, and that's what's going on in this story. And if that's enough of an explanation, that's fine. Or if you're confused or concerned, we can talk about it more." And I was like, "No, I just wanted to know what was going on. That makes sense. Okay." And that was it. That's all she said on the subject. And that was my introduction to the entire concept. And my mother really normalized it, to her very great credit. And just said, "No, that's just the way some people are, and that's what's going on with these characters. And if you have more questions, we can go over it." But she didn't belabor the point at all. And almost no one I know, and I'm dead already.
Oh.
Almost no one.
In my memory, when you told that story before, she said, "And that's okay."
Yeah, LJ notes that there are at least been versions of the story where I have mother saying, "And that's okay." I can't promise that that's what she said, but that was certainly the impression she left me with.
Mm-hmm.
And even amongst fans of E.E. Smith, not many people know the Galaxy Primes. It is not one of his better-known works.
Now, that's interesting. What year was this?
It came out in the 30s, 40s.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
even in speculative fiction, which was a lot of where early pioneering for this happened, that's still really early. It was it an English book published from an American author?
Yes.
Oh wow.
But he was E.E. Smith was, like Asimov and Heinlein, considered to be one of the old vanguards of sci-fi. Mm-hmm. So much like Heinlein later got away with doing Stranger in a Strange Land, which tackled a lot of concepts that had not been tackled in the mainstream in any way at that point. This was similarly a case, and as I said, it was not a well-known or popular book. The only reason I read it at all is that I had read everything else he'd ever written and discovered this thing existed and hunted it down. And it wasn't easy to find. So it was like a minor publisher. I think he originally did it in a magazine. And fine, right? No problem. Wow, I'm dead again already.
This one's definitely more cheesy than the other one. When I first started this ogre here stunned me in one hit and killed me from Half-Life. Are you able to come back in?
It's telling me to press start, and there we go. I was about to say, none of these buttons are counting as start.
Oh, it's just there we go. Oh, my earliest Under Siege was a fantasy book that really shaped me in my early both early game-itude life and early appreciation for fantasy and sci-fi. Are you familiar with the novel Under Siege?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so it was a really interesting story about a kid who goes to his uncle's place, and his uncle is like really, really, really into role-playing games and war games.
Mm-hmm.
And they have like a dream setup, like humongous basement that's just like 18 feet by 20 feet of 18 millimeter figures and perfectly sculpted terrain and this whole scenario and stuff. But the gimmick was that the dude was like super loaded, and the figures themselves were able to animate, and the war game played itself based on... it's an Owl Eagle! The game was able to play itself, and the figures moving around and were very lifelike.
Oh, I think I have read this. I'm just not recognizing it.
Mm-hmm. And the gimmick of the book was that the kids started to figure out that the figures themselves were probably sentient and wanting to do something that the players didn't want them to do. And I don't want to spoil the whole book, but it was like, oh my gosh, this is like the coolest concept. You could play games with these little figures and tell stories, and I wonder what is like that out there in the world. Oh, there's role-playing games.
Yeah, I read Quag Keep, which is a modestly famous early role-playing game fantasy novel. It was written by Andrew Norton in the 70s, so super early in role-playing, and it has players getting sucked into a fantasy world of their characters, and sometimes They actually talk about being able to hear the dice determining their fate bouncing in the background. And it got a sequel, which I never read. But yeah, it is interesting what formative stuff is out there. When Pathfinder 2nd Edition playtest, no, the actual core rulebook was released. I don't remember if it was the playtest of the core rulebook, but it was that Gen Con. And they had the elf feats and dwarf feats.
Mm-hmm.
When the book was released, I was wandering around Gen Con, and I saw some younger players, and I would guess late teens. I can't say for certain. Let's see what happens if I do just...
Okay.
See if we're both...
Oh, it took one of your A's away.
Yes, it did. Can't have the same name. I wonder if that's just a difference between the two games.
I mean, this is definitely the more primitive of the two games, for sure. Oh, we get to pick directions.
And we were just talking about how primitive it was.
And, you know, you mentioned, like, early games about them getting trapped in the game. And that's been a long going trope. But now it's, like, the biggest, most successful trope in fantasy literature around the world now. I mean, you've got...
Well, I mean, a lot of that is because it became such a popular anime thing. Well, manga and light novels and anime, but...
Right.
But yeah, it is become a hugely popular trope.
Yeah, I mean, the isekai you're talking about from the anime and light novels in Japan, and then over here they're calling it the Western stuff. They're calling it lit RPG. And oddly, I'm not seeing crossover in the two groups. They don't seem to be sharing and recommending each other's books.
That doesn't surprise me that much, honestly. I mean, people have a tendency to be pretty insular in their likes, oddly. It's the sort of thing, like, when I run into people who absolutely 100% is, oh, no, a Displacer Beast, very, very clearly, who absolutely insist that a dragon must have 4 limbs and 2 wings, or it's not a dragon.
That gets to me so much.
And I'm like, you know what? What about Vermithrick's Pejorative? That was in Dragon Slayer. That's clearly a dragon. And they're like, well, it's not really a dragon. Okay, dragons are imaginary, guys. So I am okay if for some specific purpose of yours, you want to say, hey, in this universe, this is a dragon, this is a drake. But, uh-oh, we're both dead. That's not good.
Well, I mean, it was a Displacer Beast.
Yep.
Actually,
I've got it in dagger range.
A lot of people miss the Beholder in Pathfinder fans, since it's not part of Pathfinder by default. And there's plenty of fan conversions out there if you want stats for the Beholder in Pathfinder and Starfinder. I miss the Displacer Beast most.
Yeah, I actually created a Displacer Beast pastiche when I was working on Dungeon a Day for Super Genius Games. And it was a cat that had tentacles and had a illusion to be in a different place, and it was called the Missing Links.
I love it so much. So what is your favorite mist monster? Which one's locked up behind the D&D product identity that you wish wasn't?
Mind Flayer. 100% Mind Flayer. I think Mind Flayer opens up so much interesting stuff. There are whole cultures and kinds of play, and Galarian has largely replaced those sorts of creepy things with more directly Cthulhian adapted things, and that's fine. But I always had a very special place in my heart for Mind Flayers, and I miss them.
I mean, there's a reason they kept them. They are such a striking creature, and they're horrific to think about what they could do to you. Yeah,
absolutely.
And have you seen the trailer for Baldur's Gate 3?
I have not.
Oh man, it has the trailer itself is, as the teaser trailer, it is absolutely worth. You've got to go see it when you get a chance. It has a person in Baldur's Gate slowly transforming into a Mind Flayer, and it's like real body horror stuff. And then it zooms out, and the whole city has Mind Flayers floating over top of it.
Okay, that's creepy. I don't remember anyone transforming into Mind Flayers in D&D, but then I haven't kept up. Oh my God, I'm dead again already.
Jacob Blackman says it's Seriomorphous.
Okay. I have not kept up with anything since like the Dragon magazine Ecology of the Mind Flayer, and I also miss Githyanki, to be honest.
Oh, me too.
I thought they were a cool mid-range foe.
Elbow skin undead.
LJ always referred to Githyanki as undead with too much extra elbow skin.
Gosh, I kind of came into the fandom a little bit past their popularity boom. And I just like keep reading like some of the old school love for the Githyanki and the Gish fighters, etc. But it's like it's not an era of the game that I really have a lot of attachment to, because when I finally made my way from other generic RPGs to D&D, 3.0 landed, and they sort of focused on a lot of other things than Githyanki in that edition.
Yeah. And, you know, some of that was just an effort to have a specific set of feels. They might have, in fact, have felt that they were overdone. Am I stunned? I am stunned.
Are these troglodytes?
I sort of thought maybe they were Sawagan, but
You're
I
on
don't...
fire?
That's not good. I hate it when I'm on fire.
Oh yeah, they've got tridents. You're right, they're Sawagan. No, they say troglodytes up on the top of the screen. Huh.
They're trident troglodytes. They're troglodytes.
Oh, that's why we're stunned. It's the stink.
Oh, great. So if we say this stinks, we're getting literal tactical advice instead of just noting how often we're dying.
You know, I kind of, like, the other game, we had, like, combos and stuff, and I've been trying all the combos and the holding attack and stuff, and they just doesn't seem to work in this one.
There are some jumping things you can do, I've discovered, which is why I keep jumping. Ooh, a ghoul. They really are going for the stench, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love ghouls so much. One of my favorite monsters to put in adventures is ghouls. It's because they still are intelligent and creepy, and there are and just having lots of opportunities where you need to talk with the ghoul instead of just killing it immediately is disturbing for the players. It's disturbing all around. In fact, the most recent oh, that's a spoiler. I'm gonna not say it then.
Oops.
So, why don't you write more adventures for publication, Perram?
I've never done it.
Yeah, but why don't you?
I don't know. Gosh, I don't know. I've had a few opportunities that just haven't worked out a few times, and that might change in the near future. In things I can't talk about. I can't jump anymore. I'm ducking.
You seem to be jumping.
Of course, it's because I said that, and the game is taunting me.
Right. Absolutely. Oh, there's that stench.
Organic
death hearts.
I don't write a lot of stuff, and I don't know why. I really have considered doing it, and I think I'm with as much exposure as I've had and advice and been involved in like betas and play tests and helped proofread stuff, I think I'd maybe do a decent shot of it. It's just kind of always intimidated me. Like, what you guys do is just so impressive, and so far afield from what I normally do.
A good chunk of what we do is have the arrogance to think anyone cares about our adventure, right? That is really the... And I'm on fire again. I have never been on fire so many times in one adventure.
Oh, stink. Nope, fire.
So they're troglodytes, but their stench comes in a bag? Are they like squeezing their armpits into a bag prior to battle? That seems...
Okay, so troglodyte stink is flammable. I'm adopting this for my campaigns now.
Okay, see? Well, I mean, troglodyte alchemists make sense, right?
Mhm.
And maybe even troglodytes with special diets so that their stenches have special powers.
Mhm.
Oh, this isn't good. Let's see if I can set him on fire.
Don't remind me
No,
of Dave's
I'm on fire. I
song.
set myself on fire with my own fire. That's not great.
I don't know how I did that, but okay.
I did set him on fire.
Aha, you got and then died. Your noble sacrifice will lead us to victory. This is actually a rather terrifying looking troll.
Agreed.
He's not big enough though. I've seen you stand next to a life-size troll.
Yes, no, they are. Well, I mean, this guy could be. Don't be sizist, Perram. This might be a small troll. Maybe, in fact, if we would just tell him that his size is valid, he would calm down and not constantly be trying to kill us. Not likely, but maybe. How long do you stay?
Games have started to do that now, but in the 90s, they really just wanted to kill us.
Yes, it's true.
We've got Statler97 asking, are we excited about Owlcat's announcements for the next computer game? Why, yes. Yes, I'm very, very excited. For those of you who don't know, they announced that Owlcat's the people that made Kingmaker, the Pathfinder computer RPG. That's very good. You should totally go play it. It's really hard, I'm warning you, though I think they've patched a lot of that difficulty to not be quite as insanely punishing as it could be. But it is a very accurate and fun simulation of playing Pathfinder. And their next game is going to be Wrath of the Righteous, which makes a lot of sense actually since they did Kingmaker the first time, because Wrath of the Righteous also has a lot of city building, king making, army fighting elements in it. So they're going to be able to use a lot of the tech they developed for Kingmaker with that game.
And I find it interesting that's what they're going for. I know why they did what they did for the first one. And it's because it was A, very, very popular, and B, had a lot of exploration and building elements that they wanted to play with in the games. It is not the case with Wrath of the Righteous, so I'm interested to see what it is from that they really want to take and gamify, and I'm wondering if it's the whole mythic concept, if they're going to have like a mythic power track that they've bolted on to have a different game experience.
Well, they did totally confirm that Mythic is going to be part of the game. But I have no idea what that looks like in that, because I mean, at No Direction we've very publicly said I've very publicly said, I won't speak for all of us, that we like the idea of Mythic, but it totally didn't quite work for us in my games. In fact, I've had to abandon a Wrath of the Righteous game halfway through because Mythic made the game so easy that even with me, like I would literally triple and quadruple the hit points of the monsters they were facing, and it wouldn't matter. They were just dead immediately. And of course, this is things that for a computer game, that's actually not a problem. I mean, look how much the two of us are just plowing through these ghouls. That's not an issue. So the power fantasy probably really helps there, especially since one of my only complaints about Kingmaker is how punishingly difficult it could be.
It makes a lot of sense that you can take Mythic and bolt it on as a power track that will give you new options. But like one of the things I have long wanted to do is take what I consider the concept behind Mythic and rewrite it to have no bonus numbers, which I know sounds weird, but if you read what Bullman was originally writing about Mythic, it was pretty clear that he did not intend for Mythic to primarily just be more bonuses that tacked onto things. And when it came out, that's what a lot of it was. And I know why that happens. It's because it is very, very difficult to... Oh, we're both dead. Are you not... Oh, you're selecting. Okay.
Yeah, it kind of wigged out on me there for a minute.
It is very, very difficult to have things that are powerful that do not involve numerical bonuses. And you only have so much time to write a game, and you got freelancers doing a bunch of it. Are we going to have to jump to take this thing?
Yes. I mean, he does
there's that
land
fire breath
occasionally,
again.
but we don't want... So the secret for all these old 90s beat 'em ups is actually to abuse the x-axis. Because you can't line up... They can't line up attacks unless it's on the x-axis. And it's so much easier for the very large sprites to act on the y-axis that jumping... that attacking on the x-axis and then retreating up the x-axis to avoid reprisals is usually how you cheese these games.
I'm just depending on virtual quarters.
Okay.
I get what you're saying, but I'm not that good.
I used to be a very, very poor kid in Appalachia, and my quarters were precious.
I played a lot of a game that was very similar to this called Rastan as a video game. And there was a Rastan machine in the... keep trying to jump and accidentally go into the select board. There was a Rastan machine at the corner store near my house, and LJ, who was my girlfriend at the time, liked watching me play it. So that was a cheap date, right? I could get $3 or $4 of quarters. She at least still claims that she genuinely enjoyed watching me play the game. And of course, there was, snacks and popcorn right there that was cheaper than movie snacks and popcorn. And then we could grab a movie from the giant kiosk of DVDs, because this was that, or actually VHS tapes. This was that era. So instead of like dinner and a movie out, it was Rastan and a $2 rented movie in. But I got so good at that for a while. First, it was like $20 and I could beat the game, and then $5 and I could beat the game, and then $1 and I could beat the game, and then I could beat the game on a quarter, and then eventually I could beat the game without ever taking damage.
Wow.
But that's because 2 or 3 times a week I was going and playing this game in order to impress my girlfriend. And I realized that does not necessarily... Oh, let's go to an abandoned mine. That sounds great. Most people don't have the opportunity to impress their girlfriend by playing games, so it's a somewhat different experience than most people, but... Okay, looks like I'm out of money. But I've got a bunch of daggers.
So I can hear an LJ in the distance. Did she
she's
actually
sitting...
enjoy it?
LJ, did you actually enjoy it?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, see.
We still do it.
Oh, really? Is there like a Rastam cabinet somewhere that you guys can enjoy that?
No, but we do it with like Mario.
Ah.
When we get a new Mario game, generally speaking, I play Mario, and she makes suggestions on where we should go and what we should do. Are we okay?
Yeah, we're
okay. We're on. Got it.
We don't have any hints on when it will come out. Statler 97. The only news we have is that it's going to come out. It's Wrath of the Righteous. It's going to have the Witch in it and the Oracle. We know that it's going to have Mythic, and we know that they secured some funding from a company in Russia to the tune of $1 million. And in terms of game development funding, $1 million actually is not very much. So,
no, but I mean, these are the same people that... Right,
sorry.
they've already got an engine, and these are the same people that successfully already put a game together, so...
Yeah.
This is not a bunch of people that have no idea what they're doing saying, but we've got $1 million. It's not like Paizo raised $1 million by itself in order to try and create a video game with no experience having done so. That would have a totally different outcome.
Indeed.
Things I can only say because I'm a freelancer now.
The main reason I'm saying that is if you're used to the tabletop industry and the budgets and Kickstarter sums raised there, $1 million would be like make all the news in ICVQ, etc. Like Kickstarter raised $1 million for this RPG product, and that would be huge. But in the video game world, $1 million will get you a small team working for a year.
Yeah, it's almost exactly what you end up with.
But no, I have no doubt that they'll deliver on this. Their budget for the first one wasn't super huge, and they did such a good job with that one. And they've
got it as a starting point now. So
yeah, and it is much easier to build a sequel using a game engine because most of the expense in a game like that is art and engine, and they've got a lot of art already, and I guarantee that we'll use a lot of it. But that's true for tabletop too. Like, art is like one of the big dollar signs.
Yeah. Well, and you know, how much you're spending very much often depends on what it is you're trying to do. Like, one of the things that had to be done for 2nd edition Pathfinder was to consider the visual look of everything, right? The original Pathfinder, it's not that they didn't put effort into it, but it was not known that it was going to be a big hit. They already had a look from stuff they were doing that was supposed to be popular with fans of 3.5, so they didn't have the reason to do custom concept art. But for both Starfinder and 2nd edition Pathfinder, there was this opportunity to say, hey, what do we want things to look like? Can we iterate that? What kind of conversations can we have about it? And that's a very different expense, amongst other things.
I understand that for Starfinder, but I'm actually surprised that they did so much for PF2, because it means that they can't reuse a lot of older art for when, like for kobolds, for instance. They drastically changed what kobolds look like, and
I mean, Paizo mostly isn't in the reusing art business anymore. They don't need to be, so they are very much looking at what can we do that is going to make the best product with its own unique identity, since they're not trying to be something that is popular for people who like a different game anymore. Because, I mean, even with Starfinder, right? Okay, these are theoretically the same worlds, the same cosmology, so yeah, we would need to discuss lasers, for example, but not necessarily anything else. But I still think it makes sense to take the time. Oh,
a lot of this is also biased from my familiarity with like early Paizo days and the wealth of reused art that happened, and talking about, you know, art budgets and those sorts of conversations in interviews. It's like, so it's really odd to also remember that, oh wait, no, Paizo's a big deal now.
That brief silence, folks, is us actually trying to figure out what we're doing.
No, the gnolls are just gnolls.
Yeah, they are beating us senseless. Not that we had a whole lot of sense to begin with, and that one apparently escaped.
Oh,
we were going to go.
I
back
remember this. We can go in here.
Oh, okay.
There's treasure in this. Oh, I don't like that. Okay. that's so cheesy.
That scorpion is a problem.
How is that thing still? It got back up. It got back up. I think it's dead. Okay.
Wow.
I remember the stories in the old days about like the cat in first edition stuff that could actually kill the whole town. And
oh yeah.
Oh, you've got enough magic items.
You never. Look, it says nothing. My choices are nothing.
Oh, so spamming the cycle does nothing for you?
No, see, I don't have anything left.
Well then I'm completely confused. Dwarves must hate magic.
Can't use scrolls. That would make sense.
Another one of those unbeatable crazy scorpions.
Do we want to go up through this hole again?
Sure.
As we are crushed to death.
I mean, crushed to death is just bonding in another language. And Hero 2245, no, not Golden Axe. Golden Axe would be another fun game to play, but no, this is Dungeons and Dragons: The Tower of Doom.
Wealth lies where the sun rises.
Okay.
Okay, we have read the sign.
Ah. Now the real trick is the obvious riddle that the DM put into the dungeon a ruse.
Is the real treasure the friends we met along the way?
Jacob Blackman is telling us to pull a lever that evidently we didn't know.
Did we skip a lever? I hate it when I skip a lever.
Yeah, looks like we missed
Still,
out.
maybe we were trying to find someone named Nate, and we decided better Nate than Lever.
You're fired.
Oh, gee, my wife just fired me. That's not good. She's actually in charge of some things for the company I am part owner of. I don't know that I want to get fired.
So, you are releasing 52 and 52, and you're covering 3 game systems that, I'm pretty
4
familiar
game
with.
systems.
No, you're covering the 3 game systems I'm familiar with, but you also are adding 5th edition. So what's your experience working with that? I don't have a lot of 5th edition cred or experience there.
So I've done some 5th edition work. I did some adventures for Adventure Week, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I have released some 5th edition products through Rogue Genius Games. I played some 5th edition, which I think is very, very important. Actually, back when I was still at Paizo, there are some Paizo folks who... Why am I not allowed to pick up scrolls? I guess I just don't get to use scrolls because I'm a dwarf.
No, I don't get to use that one.
What was with the white flash?
That was me turning undead.
Oh,
and
neat.
These aren't undead, so oops.
When the skeletons weren't undead?
Oh, yay! Oh, he's got this one. Wait, that's not what I wanted to do. I'm really bad
well,
at
congratulations, you did it, and it was effective. Oh, he kicked me in the nards. That's not good. So some of us Paizo people got together and played a 5e game for fun, and I think it's important to play a role-playing game, if at all possible, before you write for it. So, and a lot of the principles involved, I mean, I originally got started with 1st edition AD&D, and I worked for 2nd edition and 3rd edition and 3.5 and 4th edition. So I've done a lot of different D&D work, and while it's not exactly the same, some of the core principles remain relevant. Oh, nicely done.
Ah, cleric for the win.
But I also think that it's just 5th edition. You want to go in here?
Oh, sure.
I think 5th edition is important enough. Oh, ouch. That if I'm trying to get a broad base of people for 52 and 52, which you can get at the Open Gaming Store. That's opengamingstore.com. I think it is important. You've neutralized the trap. I haven't neutralized it. It hit me in the head.
That's still.
I think it's important to consider that user base rather than just exclude them. And, these games are all sharing a similar origin, and there's a fair amount of DNA in all of them. So I'm looking forward to playing with all those different possibilities. Ooh, I've got Gauntlets of Ogre Power. I wonder what that does. Oh, it's a questionably dressed drow.
I mean, he's got a cape at least this time.
Yes, which he is furling with. Okay, he got rid of the cape. It's almost as if because you mentioned it, he had to get rid of it.
That didn't work. Here we go. Sticks to snakes.
Oh my god.
It worked.
I can't believe there's a video game that has sticks to snakes.
So I've played a little bit of 5th edition too. When PF2 was coming out, and I figured it was a good idea to see what the field looked like. And got invited, thankfully, to a local game. They were playing. Gosh, what are they playing? It's the 5th edition one that's in the jungles, and it's got exploration, and it was kind of fun. And I really like the system. I also played a lot of 5th edition when it was in beta, when it was called D&D Next, and it was changing every other week.
Yeah, I tried to keep up with that as well.
And, actually I like the system. I think it's a great way to learn the game. To me, it almost feels like the 2nd edition days of D&D, and I don't know if that's blasphemy to say or not.
I don't think it's blasphemy. 2nd edition was very, very popular. I think very much, in fact, I think explicitly, one of the things they were trying to do was take everything they had learned from however many editions you want to say they have, depending on what you count as an edition, but take all of that, and make the best game they could, not just for fans of any one particular edition, but the best game they could kind of going forward. And I think that's a great way to handle it. The most frustrating thing for me about 5th edition actually is how they organize information in their glossaries, which, as games go, right, that's a pretty minor thing to complain about. But I think it's got a very strong base, and I think it's got a pretty simple set of rules to get into, and I think that's good for getting people into the industry. And I think that a lot of people will stay with it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll destroy you for the enjoyment of my master, so come to the Sable Tower.
Does
"So come to the Sable Tower" sound like he's inviting us to a club?
Oh, no. Oh.
And he's licking his sword.
Right. It's like, that's what I've just been staring at for the past couple of minutes. I'm like, what? Why? Like,
yeah, we're happy because the Shadow Elf. We've driven off the Shadow Elf and gotten invited to a club. Great. Greldon, did you select Greldon?
If I hit end without entering anything, it gave me Greldon.
I see. And I'm 14th level.
So it's important to know that the whatever core D&D-ness was in this game was based off of the Rules Cyclopedia version of it.
Okay, I'm out of loot.
Mm-hmm. So we've talked a lot about like your Pathfinder, Starfinder, and D&D stuff, and that's all got a lot of shared ancestry. But over on the Green Ronin side, you do the Fantasy Age development. Yep. So what's that like?
So I mean, Fantasy Age was originally, that system was developed for the Dragon Age tabletop RPG, and I really think in many ways, actually, it shares a very similar design philosophy to 5th edition, which is, hey, let's make a game that is fast and fun and easy and flexible enough to be interesting. It does something very, very different in that it's got the whole stunt dice system. And I think the stunt dice system is an important part of Fantasy Age. I think it's the thing that makes it the most interesting and work the best. But if you are coming into this from any of these D20 games, I mean, it's a game where you pick a species, pick a class, you got 20 levels, you don't attack with a D20, but I have yet to run into someone who can't work out to attack with 3 dice instead of with a D20. And the stunt system means that there's this random chance that cool things will happen, and you kind of get to pick what the cool things are, but not exactly when they occur. And that's one of the things that makes it the most interesting, because in my opinion, most games either give you the power to do cool stuff all the time, in which case it sort of stops being special cool stuff because it's happening all the time. I died again. Or it says, hey, you can do cool stuff, but it's very, very difficult. You've only got this small chance of pulling it off. And the problem with that is it disincentivizes you from trying the cool stuff. So if cool stuff is too easy, it stops being cool because you're doing it all the time. And if it's too hard, you stop doing it because you can never succeed with it. So the answer here is supposed to be, hey, look, there's cool stuff. And you get to help pick what cool stuff might be available, and when cool stuff happens, you get to select from some element of it. But the cool stuff, it's sort of like in video games where there's a chance something cool will happen. People who play a lot of like World of Warcraft will be familiar with the proccing concept. Is the process going to hit in? There's a chance it does X. And it does it in a very smooth, intuitive way, at least in my opinion. Obviously, I am now biased, but I liked it before I was getting paid for it. So I like to believe that my biases aren't too out of control.
No, when the Fantasy Age book came out, it was like I was so hyped for it. And it was like one of my goals at Gen Con was to get one of those early release copies. And it's definitely one of my prized books on my shelf right now.
Well, I assure you, if the No Direction Network decides that it wants to pick an arcana instead of a spell and start a new show, I know some people, which I'm aware you got stuff to do, so not suggesting that's actually going to happen. But yeah, I think for a lot of people, it takes the most fun part of RPGs, makes them much more accessible, gets rid of a lot of the fiddly bits. And I don't have a problem with fiddly bits, but they're not for everybody, and they're not for every occasion. Let's see.
We're gonna fight the Red Dragon, right?
Yeah, let's fight the dragon.
Are you sure? Yeah, this is Are you sure again? I'm absolutely sure. I want to spend $10 worth of fake quarters.
I won't try and stop you. If you were, I personally think it'd be really funny if we walked in, drew our weapons, and then there's just a shot of fire coming out of it. We die, we lose a quarter, and we have to start over.
Oh my god. Oh crap.
I'm dead.
Oh yeah. That's a one-hit kill. Hero245 in chat suggesting, what if this had microtransactions and it cost us 25 cents like the days of yore? Then this became...
Then we wouldn't be playing this. That's what
yeah.
if.
Then the ads no longer cover the budget of this episode.
Yeah.
Actually, I did the math, and last time, just the cost of me buying the game, we actually lost out if we were actually spending real quarters. We spent less fake quarters than the cost of buying the game.
That's funny.
But of course, now we have Stream 2, so let's see if we can die enough times that I feel good about that expenditure. Man, we have weird budgets in no direction.
I foresee this catch on fire thing coming up a lot while fighting a red dragon.
I mean, honestly, imagine yourself in '92. This probably blew your mind.
Yeah. This is some high-end stuff for 1992. Wait a minute, did he just... Yeah, of course, he's a dragon. He cast a spell. Sure, why not? Oil. I don't feel like oil is likely to be of a lot of use.
Q wounds! Look how little it healed. I rolled a 1 on that D8. I know I did. Notice that we don't have health bars against the enemies in this one.
Yeah, I have no idea how much health it's got coming.
Well,
and I don't care, because I can just restart this game as often as I want. So.
Combined, we have spent 35 quarters.
Oh, good lord.
So, gosh, what was I say? The H system, it's been used in a lot of other properties lately. The new version of Blue Rose, the Expanse, obviously.
And we've got Modern Age now. Yeah, I mean, it's a proprietary house engine that Chris Pramus primarily put together. People have helped, especially with the build-on stuff. But, you know, they own their own company, and they like their own game system. It's hard to argue with that. And there is, I think, very much something to be said for... I'm actually getting distracted by this dragon constantly killing us. There's something to be said for having a form factor and then bolting things onto it as it makes sense. Oh, did we actually kill it?
Yay! Victory! It only cost us $17.
Wow. It's like Funko, right? Does the Funko Pop figures. They've got a form, that big-headed, round-edge cubed form, and all they have to do is slap new IPs on it, which they license, and people get excited, they want to collect it. Monopoly does something very, very similar, right? There are all sorts of different Monopoly games out there, which are still essentially, hey, it's Monopoly. Can I not grab this? There. And as if there weren't enough forms of Monopoly, they have recently announced both a Monopoly version that takes an extra long time to play, that has a double board, you have to go around it twice. But they've also released a version of Monopoly that they claim you can play a full version of this game in 10 minutes. Now I'm resistant to flame. Great.
And I don't ever get to find out what those boots with wings on them are for.
Yeah, apparently not.
Mhm.
The
Now
Black Fountain of Evil. So I think one of the things that just makes sense for a game company, especially we were talking about the expense, right, of development, is to have a core system, whatever it is, and then say, okay, not what do we need to do to start from scratch, but what do we need to do to make this the best option for some specific game or IP or genre. And, you know, Pathfinder did that a fair amount too, right? There was a Pathfinder for Vampire Hunter D, and they did a Pathfinder class for Red Sonja, and with the comics and such, Paizo did a bunch of Pathfinder stuff that took what they already had and made versions of it for specific other properties. And I just think you want to be careful about licenses. Licenses can be expensive. Like the Star Trek license, I think, has killed more game companies than it ever made money for. But Modiphius seems to be doing fine with it so far, although if Modiphius were to go bankrupt, I would at this point blame the fact they've got the Star Trek license.
So it's cursed.
It was cursed. It seems to be okay now. Is that a fire-breathing gnoll? No, it's more of these guys. Okay. Can't do anything because I'm constantly getting... There. I throw my daggers at it. It's really tricky. It's much easier to lose money than make money in the RPG industry and tabletop gaming in general. And you can... If you make a single career miscalculation, you can end up not being able to stay in the industry. I mean, there are a lot of well-known names who just aren't in the RPG industry anymore because it stopped making sense for them. Whether that's because they made more money somewhere else. I mean, Matt Forbeck did a lot of RPGs. Michael Stackpole did a lot of RPGs, and for both of them, they got other gigs with similar skills that just paid much better. Then there are people who just gave up and took jobs driving taxis, right? It's kind of brutal, and it requires a lot of creativity, and it's exhausting, and it can chew you up and spit you out. And everyone who's ever played games, or at least everyone who's played games for years, feels like they are as good at that job as you are. People who would never tell a mechanic, hey, I've driven a car for 20 years, I think I know what's wrong with the steering wheel, will tell a RPG designer, hey, I've played RPGs for 20 years, I think I know why your game didn't work and wasn't popular. Well, no, you might not know. You might know why you didn't like it. That is very, very different from knowing why it is unpopular in general. And one of the things I have often discovered is people who think they know why they don't like a game are often wrong, in that if you give them what they say they want, they still don't like it, they're still not happy.
I mean,
there are in fact some skill and, if not science, at least education between what is fun and what is fun for an individual versus what is fun for a group and what is fun in a large environment, and those things are tricky to work out. This ogre is kind of... This is an ogre, right?
I believe so. It's definitely not a hill giant.
I was wondering if it was a really ginormous orc.
I mean, coming up with what makes one game successful and another game not. I mean, it's 1,000 different things, and if any one person could actually tell you that with any amount of certainty, I'm sure there's a billion companies who would pay them as much as they wanted. Well,
I mean, people who are really, really good at that end up doing things at Hasbro with different versions of Monopoly, right? That's where that money is. Even though there's been a huge resurgence of role-playing games in general, and that D&D is showing up on popular TV shows and being geeky, is not as geeky as it used to be, etc. There are still a lot more people playing Uno and Monopoly and Sorry than there are playing D&D. And the fewer people play something, the more expensive it is. And Monopoly, when it gets a new edition, that's a tiny little change to the rules, as opposed to the time and effort it takes to make a new edition of something like Pathfinder or D&D.
I mean, I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand about the cost of goods in anything, is that this, just because you can get a really cheap book that tells you the histories of the houses of the Harry Potter universe, and it costs like $10, and it's hardcover, and it's got glossy pages and stuff, and that's because they can sell 1 billion of those.
Yeah.
And like the potential audience for your favorite non-D&D RPG might be in the thousands.
Oh, no. It
Hundreds.
might be in the dozens.
Dozens.
Yeah, it could easily be measured in, even saying hundreds might be too much. Professional RPG publishers are often saying, okay, should we be printing 1,500 of this or 500 of this? And that's the tier 1, tier 2 people. By the time you're getting down to something like Rogue Genius Games, we might be saying, well, Ludus Porter Jr., for example, very famously says if he cannot make a project make sense financially, assuming he only sells 50 copies, he won't do it. If 50 won't break even for him, then it's not a project he does. And that's dozens. And that's even with being able to look at print costs and say, well, we'll do print on demand or we'll do a PDF. I've had people say I will never pay more than $3 for a PDF because I don't actually get anything. Well, you do get something. You get information, and information has value. And if you decide you are never going to pay just for information, that is absolutely your prerogative. But if I'm only going to sell 30 of a product, and that is a number that there are people making this their full-time income have to look at, 30, 50, 100 of something. If you're never going to pay for just the data, then those projects either won't get made or the people that make them will go bankrupt. All of which sucks. But it's just a totally different scale. And you have this thing where you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, well, I could print 2,000 of something, and it'll cost me $4 per, or I could print 3,000 of something and it'll only cost me $3 per. But if I'm only going to sell 2,000, the savings per unit doesn't make a difference.
Oh gosh, it's really hard to even think at that scale, because I'm like a good cover for a project could cost $200-300, and man, how does that math even work out?
I mean, a good cover can run $2,000-3,000, right? If you want a Wayne Reynolds cover, you are spending thousands of dollars, and you are spending those thousands of dollars having carefully scheduled with him way in advance because he may not have time to do your cover. And there are cheaper people, right? But then there are people who say, well, I can buy this book that is 500 pages with a Wayne Reynolds cover for $65, so that's what I want all my books to be. And I'm not saying that you're wrong, but I am saying there are a whole lot more people that can't sell the 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 copies of something it takes to make that money make sense than there are people who can do it. That is also another reason why you end up with the core rulebook question, right? When you're talking about your market, the core rulebook is everyone who might play this game. Then when you're talking about adventure, it's, okay, everyone who might run this game, so that's a subset. And then for your second adventure, it's everyone who might run this game who needs another adventure. When you do a supplement to the rules that you introduced in the adventure, you can now only sell it to people who might play that adventure, who don't need another adventure, who are interested in what you're doing. And you get these smaller and smaller and smaller subsets with every product. I think, personally, one of the reasons that 5th edition has been pretty successful is that they haven't put out much stuff for it. And as a result, they are keeping people hungry, and those people can only get what they want periodically so that they continue to sell a lot of copies of each of these books. Now, I don't have inside information on that. That's my look at things from the outside. But that is what it looks like to me as a part of their success. These guys are trying to grab us from below, and it's creeping me out. And these mudmen are creepy.
Which
I
I totally agree with you on that, but it's also ironic because like one of the big reasons that I'm not a big 5th edition player or fan of it is because of that very, very slow drip compared to what I'm used to in 3rd, 4th, and Pathfinder of all these options coming out very quickly.
Well, if you want those options, then you go to the DM's Guild on drive-thru, and you buy third-party stuff that's been licensed and can have some very good people working on it. And, you know, Dan Dillon was doing stuff for that, and he did so well that he got hired by Wizards of the Coast. So they're clearly paying attention, and there's clearly high-quality stuff available there. You just have to find it, and that's where I think reviews can be very useful. As long as this guy's going to be right at range. Okay, is this a Lich?
Yep. I'm pretty sure this is the last boss.
Why is he wearing armored feet?
Maybe he'll
He's raising
tell
your
us.
glass to us. Well done, knaves. Against my weak, inept minions. Thanks, dude. Oh, is he a Death Knight?
Oh, well that would make more sense, but I don't see the big giant sword. Heroes calling him Skeletor.
I mean, he's actually a little overdressed for Skeletor. That's looking pretty lichy. Yeah, that just...
Okay, obviously it's socks and sandals, not armored feet.
You got a turn in there?
He keeps fireballing me. And now I'm very dead.
Well, but you'll be back.
Indeed.
Being dead isn't a concern.
Being
Wow,
undead
there
seems
are a
better
lot of
right
these
now.
things.
Okay,
At least you got rid of those things. That's helpful.
Ooh, okay. See, the cheese is strong in this one.
I'm supposed to be resistant to fire damage, but I'm not noticing any particular Okay, he just hit me in the face 5 times with that stick. That's just obnoxious.
Heroes saying socks and sandals, evil confirmed. And, oh boy, he's got mirror images.
They did warn us that he controlled illusions.
I don't see enough illusionist liches.
Well, yeah, in fact, if they're careful about it, you won't see any illusionist liches, because they'll be invisible. I got to admit that one of my favorite 3.0 adventures I wrote was Tiger's Den, which has a Rakshasa named Vishana Bhaga. And one of her, since she is an illusionist, one of her big tactics is to have mind-controlled a bunch of gnomes and told them that if anyone comes along and tries to rescue them, to tell them that there is a powerful lich. How do I... I've gotten in settings somehow.
So that's an interesting. How much do you rely, like, with the power of the GM and the players not trusting anything you say anyway? Like, how much is using red herrings good, and how much is it like just risking turning your game into a paranoia slog?
That's fair, right? But if what you have are, and for example, they're mind controlled. So if you want to check for your paranoia, detect magic on them and see if there's enchantment magic. There's rules to see if you can tell if someone's enchanted. That's a sense motive check. So I never felt bad about it, because if players know exactly what they are facing, their opportunity to specifically pick stuff that gives them advantages against just that foe is pretty significant.
So the play experience for that must be suddenly a whole lot of paladin and cleric nonsense gets prepared.
Yeah, well, and for that matter, you know, we're going to buy arrows of evil outsider bane or holy good or whatever. But if you convince them that what they are up against is an undead, then they will have a whole bunch of undead stuff ready, and they will not necessarily be ready for a Rakshasa, who can shapeshift and do all sorts of neat illusionary tricks. When we're done, is it going to tell us how many times I died compared to how many times you died?
Oh, it's already telling us every time you die.
How am I doing?
You were at 25 deaths.
And what are you at?
21.
Okay, that's what I thought.
That's my. Oh, I'm at 24 now.
20. Wait, you went from 21 deaths to 24 deaths?
I was wrong.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, that's just how bad this Lich is. He, when he kills you, he kills your next 3 resurrections as well.
If you are raised from this death effect, you immediately die. What? No, you can be raised after that. It's just lingering death. You're so dead. I wonder if that actually affects him, because we don't have any way of knowing what...
I'm pretty sure nothing affects him. He's the end game boss of a quarter.
Oh wait, he does have a life bar. It just only appears up when we're actually doing damage to him.
Oh, that'll have his name too. He is Demos. So, ooh, Fireball is effective. You have died 31 times. Alright, man, I can't believe I'm concentrating on this game.
I know, right?
It's like, die, you blue-robed jerk. And that by that I mean again. And stay that way. Though, at least I hope it doesn't make the next level hunting down its phylactery.
Now, see, if this was a say, 5-year earlier game, then what would happen is after we kill him, it would say, you didn't find his phylactery at level 14, so you lose the game. You have to replay, find his phylactery, start over from scratch. It's like the games that told you in Chapter 14 that in Chapter 2 you picked up bad guacamole and now you're going to die, even though nothing has happened for 8 chapters, whatever. You screwed up then, so there's nothing you can do about it.
So what were some of your earlier video game loves?
So my family had a Pong system, which we hooked up to the TV. That's the kind of old I am. And
It only played Pong?
yes, I don't mean we had Pong for the Atari or anything. I mean we had a machine that hooked up, had controls built into it, and you used it to play Pong and nothing but Pong. And I loved that Pong machine. And yes, nothing but Pong, but it had 3 versions of Pong. It had regular Pong, which it called Tennis Pong. It also had a version where both of your moving discs were on one side and there was a single flat wall on the other side, and that was handball. And then there was one with barricades in the middle, and it called that hockey. But I'm not sure I can describe how amazing it was before you knew anyone could do it, before computer games were a thing, to be aware that your television had this virtual set of lights that you controlled and you could play a game that way. It was a totally new paradigm in games. And then from there we bought a Commodore 64, and there was a game called Temple of Apshai, which I played the heck out of, which was you're a little stick man, and there are a bunch of different colored little sticks and glyphs, and they are very Dungeons & Dragons-like monsters, from dragons to Black Mamba to trolls. And you just wandered around the temple, which was procedurally generated, so there were hundreds, if not thousands, of levels. And there were like 20 different things you could kill, but of course they gained levels too, so you could just keep going, as far as I know, forever. And Omega Race, which was sort of a cross between Space Invaders and Asteroids, was very much inspired by those games. And those were my early real obsessions. And after that, I didn't really get hooked on anything until Mario. Where I was so hooked on Mario that when we had Mario 2 for the Super Nintendo, my wife and I were playing it over a weekend when we first got it. And we played it all Friday night, and then all day Saturday, and then all day Sunday. And it's like 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, Monday morning, we're still playing. We realized we need to go to work. So we called in sick so that we could finish playing Super Mario 2, which is one of the most irresponsible things I have ever done. But we did beat the game, so
So, there's that.
and then we slept, and then we went to work Tuesday.
Oh, man. I don't know that I've ever called in sick to play a video game, but I have scheduled vacation for WoW expansions.
Yeah, I've done that too.
Like, I imagine that the Wizards in Paizo's office maybe has a sudden rush during something like that.
For that, it tends to be things like a new Stephen King novel will sometimes cause a rush, or if there is a new big console game. There's a lot of console gamers, especially at Paizo. So if there's like a new Skyrim or something like that everyone's excited about.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have succeeded. We killed the Lich Demos and collapsed the Tower of Doom.
Wow. And we killed a dragon.
Yeah.
Which was actually harder.
Yeah, that dragon was... but they did warn us 3 times about that dragon, so we should have known.
And it's the most passive-aggressive video game line I've ever said. Well, I won't try to stop you. Again. So anyone in the chat have final questions that they want to ask us while we're sitting here?
Yep, anything at all. Of course, there's like a minute delay, so we've got to fill that minute now. So man, my early video game days were like Legend of Zelda was like the thing. I think I've played that like for hours every single day from basically age 2 to age 12.
Yeah, I never got into Zelda, and I don't know why. It seemed like it should be right up my alley, but I tried a bunch of different Zelda games, and I always just ended up going, yeah, okay, give me another Mario expansion. Give me Spyro the Dragon. That's. I really like good platform games. Bad platform games I find incredibly frustrating, but good ones I love.
Well, Spyro just got a good remaster re-release for just about every system on the planet. If you haven't picked that up yet.
I've seen that. I have not picked it up. I am not currently in the place where I am picking up a lot of pricey and expensive games. Maybe that will change. But there are things that I am willing to shell out. Okay, here's $10 a month for this thing I've already bought this game for. Mm-hmm. I haven't finished Mario Odyssey for that matter, so if we break that out and hook it up to our great big television, we packed up a bunch of stuff when we moved, and we haven't unpacked everything yet, which, given that it's been 4 or 5 months now, is sort of tells you how much we are not spending time unpacking that maybe we should. But I mean, the expense of computer games is one of the things that drove me originally to role-playing games, right? Especially role-playing games that have online rules documents, because if I am interested in playing Pathfinder 2nd Edition, I do, as it happens, have a core rulebook, but I can get all of the data I need for that online and put together and play a character that way, and I have infinite hours of replay as long as I can get someone to run a game. Or if I'm willing to run a game, I can have infinite hours, because I guarantee you, if I say, hey, I'm running a game on this date and I let it be widely enough known, I'll be able to get 3 or 4 players together. That's my wife is laughing in the background because she would be one of those 3 or 4 players.
You would have to fritter it down to 2 or 3 players.
Yeah, I might well have a good deal more players than that. But it's one of the things I really value about role-playing games is that as long as you're willing to either borrow stuff online or make up your own stuff, there's this infinite replay value. Whereas when we had the, I think, GameCube, although I might be a generation behind, but there was a version of Gauntlet for it. I loved that Gauntlet game, and I played it obsessively for a few months. But once I had explored everything and unlocked everything and broken everything, it just didn't have a lot of replay value for me anymore. I could do it for a while. It's the same with something like World of Warcraft or much of any morgue. There comes a point in each expansion, I may not have done everything, but I have done everything I care about, which is the important thing. And then it's sort of, yeah, it can become fun a little bit, but I'm so familiar with everything that the replay goes down. Now, for morgues, that's, of course, when they hope that they have a new expansion out. And I am not big on things like the various gladiatorial games or pet games or tie-in card games. There are a lot of things they do to give people new content that just aren't for me. But I do still enjoy it when a new expansion comes out and I get to play with the brand new toys and the brand new places. LJ and I have sometimes referred to that as taking a virtual vacation, right? Okay, we're going to schedule 5 days where we're not doing anything, and instead of taking a road trip, we're going to go to Azeroth for a few days.
Mhm. Oh man, I have wasted so much of my life playing MMORPGs. I used to like. The only reason I don't is that No Direction no longer gives me time to do that. I mean, just spoiler alert: running the tech side of this network takes a little bit of my time away. But before that, I was, those people that like do the world's first boss clears and like stay up all night raiding and competing with people in Germany to see if we can be marginally faster on a clear rate through an impossible bit of content way before we should be trying it.
Yep.
That's what I spent my time on before I discovered the joys of the world of podcasting. But thankfully Gen Con saved me from that life.
I understand.
I'm impressed actually that there's that level of gaming commitment. Like we talk about in role playing games. You said that I almost giggled when you said that you went to role playing games because it doesn't cost anything. And role playing games can be very cheap hobby.
Yep.
I say as I sit in a custom built game tavern with thousands of miniatures and terrain.
Oh yeah. No, I mean I have spent a ton of money on role playing games, and I've even joked about the fact, though it's true, that I have a role playing game writer career because I was trying to save up enough money to get a Dragon magazine subscription. But especially as a freelancer, where I have a real feast or famine budget, I can spend the money when I've got it, and then not spend it when I don't. Like if I buy a figure. If the game I bought the figure for collapses, but that figure is an elf with a sword and a longbow, chances are I will have a use again in weeks or months or years for an elf with a sword and a longbow, so that groundwork remains useful.
Yeah, and also I've learned that it takes very little effort to take an elf with a sword and a longbow and a pair of snips to turn it into a very thin Jedi with pointy ears.
Yeah, for example. Yeah, I love one of the things I did when we were working on the Starfighter role-playing game is we had some playtest characters, and I made myself a dwarf Solarian, and I really wanted a dwarf Solarian figure.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up taking a dwarf and snipping off his melee weapon, and I had a piece of colored plastic that was the broken tip of a energy scythe from a Gundam. And I carved a little hole where his hand would go and glued it over it, so he had this big green energy blade. And then he had just been standing, with a fist, so you could put a shield on it. Instead, I just put a little scrap tube on it and it became a pistol. And he was already sort of dressed like a Jedi, honestly. So it became my I don't remember the name of that character, but it became my playtest figure. And you don't have to have custom appropriate figures when you are playtesting a game you haven't even released yet. But I liked making myself, okay, here's a Lashunta, where I literally took a scrap HeroClix figure and little plastic antenna from a cheap 25-cent Halloween spider,
Mm-hmm.
and I just glued the antenna on, and whammo, Lashunta. That added a lot for me, and I enjoy those as craft projects. One of the things that sometimes can get me as a professional tabletop game creator is that sometimes it feels like everything I do is part of my job. So I really try and embrace the parts that I'm not monetizing. Like, I don't make figures for the industry. I'm not making paint masters. I'm not doing modeling. I'm not trying to get my own line released. So I can really embrace figure modification and painting and collecting as related to the industry in a way that has nothing to do with my job.
But how often do you hear the little siren call in the back of your head? This could be a monetary stream.
So I hear it, especially I've got what I call my Zen, my hobby setting, which is diesel pulp. It is a specific 1947, actually 1949, I guess, pulp World War II setting that I do a whole ton of miniatures for. I've got it for people on the stream, right? I get people to 3D print them for me, and I customize them, and I paint them. And this setting is not for commercial release. forever. So I don't have to worry about intellectual properties. I don't have to worry about the fact that I am borrowing other people's models, so I don't end up doing the Battletech thing of stealing someone else's designs and trying to use them for my game. All of this exists just to be a fun thing I do. And sometimes people even reach out. There's like, "Ooh, I love the backstories you're writing for that. Why don't you turn that into a game?" Well, I was doing backstories for fictional pieces of equipment long before I was doing this professionally. I want to have this one thing, this one geeky, I admit, game related thing that I don't try to monetize so that I can lean back on it and not feel like I am secretly doing work.
I mean, I fall into that trap a lot too. It's like whenever I'm spending a lot of time on something gaming related that we're not doing content for,
Uh
I
huh.
feel guilty.
Uh
Or
huh.
and then I also feel like really guilty with it has totally affected what games I choose to play, what games I because I got like really got hype about Eclipse Phase and I was like, where do
Uh
I
huh.
fit Eclipse Phase? But I really should be playing Starfinder, not Eclipse Phase right now, because I have to do Starfinder content for No Direction Beyond.
Oh,
Um,
sure.
and that and this is something like this is in the streamer life that is totally like I'm not a streamer, I'm a podcaster. It's a completely different thing, but where I watch a lot of Twitch streams and lots of gamers and they totally that's a common like kumbaya moment when they start talking about, oh, I would really love to play this other game, but no, it wouldn't bring the viewers.
Yeah. Yeah. When I took some writing courses with some professional writers, and same with screenwriting, one of the things they told me is that if you let that get in your head all the time, if you're a novelist, you can end up no longer able to just enjoy a novel because every page you're reading, you're like, oh, how did they put this together? How did they construct that? What part of this could I borrow? What do I not like? And so instead of just reading a novel, you are constantly analyzing the work behind a novel. That's a totally different experience.
That's me in graphic design, because my day
Right.
job. Like I look at a billboard and I'm like, okay, that's that font, and they did this thing with that, and that's how they did the gradient, and there's the drop shadow, and I'm like, oof.
And anytime I pick up a new role playing game, I'm frequently looking at how did they handle this question? What is their presentation order? What is their core mechanic? What do they expect people to do with this, and how do they communicate that? I think that's just a natural part of having anything being deep in your industry. So it doesn't look like chat has anything for us. Do we want to call it?
I think that's it. Thank you, everyone who tuned in and joined us here, and those of you that have tuned in after the fact and watched us on YouTube. We very much appreciate this. This was an effort behind the arranged by the No Direction Network. You can check us out at nodirectionpodcast.com, where you'll find a few interesting links and a ton of blog content, as well as our several podcasts that you should totally check out, like No Direction, the Pathfinder news, reviews, and interviews podcast. No Direction Beyond, which is the Starfinder news, reviews, and interviews podcast with a very special brand new host.
Yeah,
Two,
Vanessa.
yeah, two very, yes, Vanessa and Owen. I keep forgetting about Vanessa because we were actually bringing her in before your news happened, so I don't mean to keep sliding her. But that was something we had already announced weeks ago, and then like you're the newer news. But yes, Vanessa is taking over the back end of that podcast and being a
Yeah, she's doing the
fantastic
heavy lifting.
personality. And
All I have to do is show up and tell stories about when we were making the game. So that's easy. She's doing the hard work.
And of course, our other two podcasts that are totally worth checking out, Adventurous, our trek through the War for the Crown with Jim Crystal Fraser. It is a blast. You should totally check it out. It has sort of turned into the dating sim of of War for the Crown. I'm partially to blame for that. I mean, you
It's
can't
nothing
have it.
wrong as long as you guys are having fun. There's nothing wrong with
You
that.
modeled one of the characters after Idris Elba. How can I help it? And then, of course, there is Stellar, which is our Starfinder podcast, actual play podcast, where we're going against the Aeon Throne and also trying to figure out when the most opportunity is to flood a whole compound full of lightning monkeys.
You gotta flood a compound with lightning monkeys.
And finally, if you want to hang out with us throughout the week, do so at our Discord channel. You can find the link there. And if you wish to support our continued efforts and make more shows like this and other shows we haven't announced yet happen, you can do so by supporting us on our Patreon. You'll find the Patreon link at nodirectionpodcast.com. So until next time, everyone, it's been fun.
Bye, folks.